So, first of all, welcome, Chris. Thanks so much for joining us on Product Hunt Live.
Thanks for having me.
Uh,
Appreciate it.
yeah, no, I know we've been talking about it for some time, so it's really cool to have you here and to tell us about everything that's new that's happening with you. And hello to Blab and everyone on Product Hunt as well.
Awesome.
Obviously, we have Chris here, and Chris, I just want to ask you just to start off with. Obviously, we all know you from your Snapchat storytelling,
Yeah.
and everything you do on there. You've also recently launched the Slinger app, which was live on Product Hunt a couple of weeks ago. I'm really just going to kick off with some questions, and we have a ton of questions coming in from you on the live page as well.
Cool.
So we'll be dipping in and out of those and maybe take some calls towards the end.
Awesome.
Great. So to start off with then, tell us a bit about Slinger. It's new. How's that all going?
Yeah, so Slinger is, we kind of launched it as the first app to kind of upload your old Snapchat stories. We really wanted to have a place where all the creators who are currently on Snapchat have one place where all of their content can live and they can kind of build a legacy around their art. And so we launched about 3 weeks ago. We've done just about 3 million seconds of video watched in the first 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. We have a really strong community of influencers, of Snapchat influencers who didn't really have a place to upload their old Snapchat stories, and now it's reminding me a lot of the early days of Vine, when there was a really strong community between the Viners and they were all collabing with each other and they were very supportive of each other. So that's kind of what it's reminding me of right now.
Do you see yourself as in any way a competitor of Snapchat, or is this more to sort of complement?
Yeah, I would say it's more of a compliment. Snapchat is first and foremost a chat application, and the entire premise of their platform is for the content to disappear after 24 hours. And we think there's room for both places. We think there's room for content to be destroyed after 24 hours and content to live on after 24 hours. And the way we kind of see it is Snapchat is a great paintbrush. It's a great place to kind of, try to make a Snapchat story and see if what your audience says about it. And if they really like it, then you can put it on the gallery, which is Slinger, and allow that content to live on forever.
And how did you you've obviously got a lot of users straight away. That's an incredible figure to reach in the first couple of weeks. How have you gone out marketing and what's your strategy for growth?
So our growth strategy was, we basically got all the up and coming Snapchatters together, and they have powerful marketing channels. They have really powerful audiences, dedicated fans, and the message was simple. Everybody just basically said, go follow me on Slinger. You can go watch all my old Snapchat stories, and you can discover new people. And we did a pretty hard push the first few days, and from there we just wanted to see, would the app get traction by itself, and would the app live on by itself? And we've seen that it is, and it's going to.
It's been really fun to see the growth that you've had, and obviously from the starting in Snapchat at the beginning. We've got a lot of people asking here, how did you get started? What is the beginning of your story on Snapchat? And I guess, did you foresee what could happen? Yeah.
Beginning of Snapchat, I was in Iceland with my friend Jerome Jar, and we basically, the story is we threw a meetup there for a whole bunch of his fans at the time. Anybody who doesn't know who Jerome Jar is, he's one of the top Viners in the world. At the time, he had a few million followers, and he threw a meetup there. And all of a sudden, all these kids, it was like 6,000 kids ended up showing up to this meetup. And there was so many kids that showed up to this meetup trying to get selfies with Jerome. There was so much demand for him. All of a sudden, they started chasing me because I'm his best friend. And then all of a sudden they started following me on Twitter and Instagram, and all of a sudden, for the first time ever, my social media presence just started exploding. So from there, that night, Jerome was like, "Why would you leave Iceland? Why don't you just stay here?" And the next day we were supposed to move back to New York, and And he's like, why don't you just stay here? And I'm like, you know what, you're right, I am going to stay here. So I ended up staying in Iceland. And is it noisy in the background by any chance? Is it too noisy at all?
I'm good.
Okay, cool. So I ended up staying there, and all of a sudden my social media following just started exploding. And then a few days in while I was there, all of a sudden kids were telling me, add us on Snapchat, add us on Snapchat, add us on Snapchat. And then I realized Snapchat went mainstream in Iceland in January 2014. And it went mainstream to a point where grandparents were on Snapchat sending snaps back and forth to each other. So I was like, it hit me really hard that Snapchat was going to be huge worldwide. And the reason why Snapchat went huge in Iceland first is because the degrees of separation between everybody are so small that the network effects were hit really early on, and everybody just was on the platform. And it just made me realize, oh my God, it's gonna be huge everywhere. So all of a sudden all these kids just started following me on Snapchat, and I just started telling daily stories of motivation and inspiration and just showing what I was doing during the day. And then my following started to grow like crazy. And then I started to realize that one of the reasons why Snapchat is so powerful is because it's a very intimate experience for people on both ends. It almost feels like you're holding the phone, and it almost feels like you're holding the person's hand on the other end. It almost feels like you could cuddle the person on the other end. It feels like a FaceTime call. And what I realized was, that kind of technology has a very different effect on the user when has a very different type of effect in that it's more of an emotional experience than if you were to watch somebody on a horizontal screen. It's frame of the body, horizontal video, there's noise on the sides, you can kind of see the head. When it's vertical, all the attention is completely captured on all the expression from the body, and it just has very different effects on people on the other end. So I just started realizing that, and then I told Jerome, you need to get on Snapchat as soon as possible. It's going to be the next big thing. And at the time, he was still focusing on Vine. And then about 5 months later, he finally realized, okay, I'm going to go all in on Snapchat. And then he started promoting his Snapchat account. And then he ended up promoting my Snapchat account as well from his. And we were able to see like the conversion rates were just off the charts compared to any other medium. And it was because it was such an intimate platform. People really felt like they were sitting in the room with you. So that's kind of the beginning of the story.
It's really an incredible journey, and I didn't actually realize it all very nicely. We have a Brinja, and I really apologize for saying your name wrong. But he is basically wants you to go back to Iceland.
Who's saying that? Sorry.
I'm just opening it here. You should hopefully be able to see it coming on the screen. Here we go.
Brynjar. Chris Johnson. Hi, Chris.
Thank you.
So should I read this or?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay. Hi, Chris. I've been a really big fan of yours ever since you made your first trip here to Iceland. Keep up the entrepreneuring, and I really enjoy your stories. Here's my question. What was the toughest challenge that you ever had to overcome? Best regards.
Going in for a big one.
Sorry?
Going in for a big question from the community to start with.
Yeah. Okay. The toughest challenge that I ever had to overcome. Wow, I had a lot. I know exactly what the answer is. I've had a lot of challenges my entire life, and my mentality. So my entire life has been pretty much up and down roller coaster. The biggest thing I had to overcome was when I do have a challenge that I'm confronted with. So this is kind of like a meta challenge. When I am confronted with these challenges, what I used to do is victimize myself and be like, why do I have to face all these challenges? Like, why me? Why is this happening to me all the time? And I kind of went from a mentality of kind of punishing myself and hurting myself and feeling sorry for myself to a mentality of every time I do have a challenge I'm confronted with, I take it head on and I'm like, I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to get through this. And it's really a mind shift set of victimization to the opposite of that. It was probably the biggest challenge I had to overcome. But it now helps me get through pretty much any challenge I'm confronted with.
I think that's something everyone can take away. It's what you're saying is more, it's the mental challenge that you had to overcome to sort of get over all the hurdles you have.
Exactly. Exactly.
A lot of positive attitudes to see through anything that's thrown your way.
Yeah. Exactly.
And we see that reflected a bit in your Snapchat stories. You post a lot of inspirational and motivational messages in the stories that you share. Do you have a favorite Snapchat story or a favorite message that you like to get across in how you present yourself?
Yeah, one of my favorites is probably the I did a story about failure is an illusion, and you know, this is something I realized a few years ago, is there is no failures in life. There are only lessons to learn from. Anytime there's something in life called feedback loops, and there's positive and negative feedback loops, and these feedback loops exist in every single system in the universe. Feedback loops exist in biological, social systems, electrical systems. Every single system that exists is positive and negative feedback loops. And whenever a human is confronted with a challenge or they fail, there's no such thing in life as that failure being a bad thing. As long as you're open-minded and willing to learn from that failure, you can only move forward. You can only move to the next level. And when something bad happens in your life, there's a negative feedback loop tells you that you're doing something wrong, and therefore you can improve and not do that thing again. If you do something in life and it's a good thing, you'll get a positive feedback loop and you continue to do that thing. And it's similar in the startup world. When you launch a platform and an app, you ask for feedback. It's a very common way. Everybody says ask for feedback. What in the entrepreneurial world, one of the most dangerous things is too much positive feedback and not enough negative feedback. And if you look at an electrical system, if an electrical system has too much positive feedback, the entire system will explode. It requires both a balance of positive and negative feedback. So what we're building Slinger right now, we depend on and thrive on feedback. And you guys know this too at Product Hunt. You require feedback in order to improve. And some people have a really hard time listening to negative feedback. But one of the things I kind of realized a few years ago was, if you can remove the ego and when you hear negative feedback, you don't reject it. If you can accept it and listen to all and let it really sink in and don't be offended by it, then all of a sudden you're part of an environment where you can thrive. So yeah.
That's so true. I think it's often hard to hear the negative criticism or anything thrown at you without that positive vibe, but you can learn so much from it. And yeah, totally. At Product Hunt, we always welcome the community to let us know what we're doing right and wrong, and that's how we grow.
Exactly.
So awesome. And do you find with the sort of influence you've gained in Snapchat, you've become a bit of an icon and a bit of a person of a sort of status? Do you find any responsibility in that, or how do you deal with the responsibility of having an influence over such a large audience of people?
So yeah, I think anybody with a social media following should have a sense of self-responsibility. I think that there's too many influencers these days, and I'm not afraid to say it, that are producing garbage content that really doesn't have any positive effect on the world. And I think that it's our responsibility as influencers to be actually changing the world for the better. There's a new wave of media influencers coming. There's the ones that exist now, but there's another one that's coming, and it's going to be very, very powerful. I think it's going to disrupt media as we know it, and it's going to be their responsibility to be actually affecting the world in a positive way, and not just to say it so that they become more famous and to have more influence. Is to really actually believe that they can actually influence and affect the world in a different way. And the history of influencers has been through Hollywood, and Hollywood is kind of old Hollywood is kind of a place where the people are chosen by executives, and they're kind of at the whim of what the executives want them to do. But in this new world, these influencers have nobody telling them what to do, and I think there's a lot of influencers right now that are producing negative content, and I think it would be awesome if all of a sudden they switched into positive mode and took their negative influence into like a positive influence. And you can see Jerome, I would say he's leading that front more than anybody right now. But I think there's going to be a lot more of positive influencers, and it's going to be a thing to be good in the future and not use your power for bad.
Yes, power only for good, not for evil.
Exactly.
And do you see any responsibility on the sort of the builders of the technology to have more regulation over negative influences, or do you see it as the responsibility of the influencer?
Sorry?
So do you see sort of negative commenting and producing negative influences on social media as a responsibility of the builders of of that platform, or solely on the people who are using it to manage?
I don't know. I think that obviously it's great to have an environment where only the positive message are kind of thriving and rising up to the top. But you see a lot of negative comments on social media, and you can only imagine that whoever that person that's submitting those negative comments, they must be going through something in their life that's making them do that. I don't think that people are naturally evil people. I think people that appear to be evil or to be negative are just confused, and I don't think it's in anybody's best interest to do that kind of stuff. So in a way, I think it's good that people have the ability to express kind of democratically, how they really feel. But I did a Snapchat story a long time ago about defeating the haters. It was actually one of my first Snapchat stories. It was like a year and a half ago, and it was basically me. And I used to wear a bandana in all my stories, and basically it was me walking down New York City one day, and this little green blob on the side of the road. So I couldn't really draw on Snapchat. I just drew a little green blob in the story. And this little green blob basically offends me as I'm walking by, and it says something to me really negative. And I look at it, and it really annoys me that this little green blob is saying negative things to me. So then I ignore it and I keep walking, and then all of a sudden the green blob appears beside me again, and it says something else to me that offends me. And then I retort back, and I say something offensive back to it, and all of a sudden the green blob starts to grow. And then as I'm walking through the city, this green blob is like saying more and more mean things to me, and then I'm saying more and more mean things back to it. And it was like a 3-series story. And by the end of the entire story, the green blob was the entire size of the Empire State Building. And the whole moral of the story was the more that I fed it back negativity, the more it would grow. And I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't realize, why is this green blob growing so big? Why? I can't understand it. And I just want to destroy it. I just want to. And then at the end, I was at the top of the Empire State Building. And then the green blob, I made this whole thing. The green blob was the entire size of the city, and it was taking over New York City. And then at the end, all I had to say was, "I love you" to the green blob, and it totally got destroyed, and it turned into a cute little green thing again. And then the best way to destroy the haters is to show them love. And the green blob's name was Haters, by the way. So that was actually one of my stories. Is I don't think it's. I think that the only way you can approach haters is shower them with love, and there's nothing they can do. If somebody's being mean to you, if you're giving them a very loving and nurturing experience, eventually they're gonna realize, this is silly. Why am I being such a negative person? But yeah, I kind of went on a rant on that question.
No, I love it. It's a perfect metaphor, and it's a great story with a great message. So thank you for sharing it with us.
No.
I'm going to dive in here with some questions from the Product Hunt community. So we've got a few coming through. Here we go. We have one from Harry Stebbings. We should see that. So Harry wants to know, he says, "Chris, thanks so much for joining us today. Big fan. My question is, what has been the single biggest determinant of your success on Snapchat? And also, what have been your biggest takeaways from the experience?"
The best thing you can do on Snapchat is tell the truth. and this is what I tell brands when I do consulting with them. The best thing you can do on Snapchat is tell the truth, because if you don't tell the truth, the audience smells it instantly, and it has the reverse effect of whatever you're trying to do. So, brands have a really hard time telling the truth to their audience. A lot of the times they're trying to sell their audience something, or trying to, manipulate them into buying something. So brands have come to me and they're like, Chris, we don't even know what do we say? We don't even know what to say to them. And I'm like, well, now it's an opportunity to tell them the truth. And that means taking them on exclusive access to behind the scenes, or telling them things they never heard before about the company, and building a really intimate relationship with them for the first time. I think telling the truth is obviously the best thing you could possibly do. But on Snapchat, if you don't tell the truth, the audience is going to smell it. And you can see influencers sometimes when they're lying on Snapchat, and it's kind of embarrassing, because they can't really understand how the audience is perceiving them. But like, to everybody watching, it's so obvious that they're lying. So that is what you have to do in today's day and age on social media, is tell the truth 100%. And yeah.
I guess on a similar question, then we have another one about you working with sort of brands. So Anton says, how do you manage all of the requests? And do you have an agent taking charge of the business side of things, or is this something you solely manage?
So yeah, I throughout the year, I have, I guess I started doing brand work this time last year. It was the first time in 4 or 5 years that I actually started making money. I've been trying to launch tech startups before then for years. I've been living on couches and eating rice and ramen noodles before then. So all of a sudden I had this following, and then brands just came out reaching out to me out of nowhere. And then over time, I started getting bombarded with a lot of different deals. But what I had to do was kind of weed out the ones that I didn't really resonate with, because again, if you lie on Snapchat, the audience is going to read into that lie. So I had to find brands that I really resonated with, and it didn't get too overwhelming, but there was a point where I didn't want to focus. I wanted to focus on the creation side, and I didn't want to focus on the business side. So I had agencies that I was working with, and then at one point I did get a manager, and my manager ended up being one of my best friend's older brothers, and he still works with me. We still do brand deals together. But for the past 4 months, I actually haven't been very active on Snapchat. I don't know if anybody has realized, but I haven't been as active, and the reason is because I've been really focusing on building Slinger, and it kind of hurts, because I really miss the creative side of things. I have all these ideas all the time of different ideas I want to do, but brands haven't been reaching out to me for the past 4 months, just because I haven't been active. And it's kind of sad, but at the same time, it's exciting, because it's kind of like I feel like, I'm cocooning right now, and about to emerge with a platform that's much bigger than just my Snapchat stories.
Cool. Well, it's already began, so that's incredibly exciting to see for us. And I'm just going to bring in another quick question here from our very own Ryan.
I know that.
So Ryan would like to know, he's been following your stories for a long while. We've gone over how you got into Snapchat, but where do you think more broadly the independent entertainment storytelling business is going, and how that's going to grow in the next few years?
Great question, Ryan. I think that it's evolving to a place where, and I think vertical video is the perfect medium for this, but it's evolving to where, Snapchat stories is kind of an intro to people telling their own stories. Back in the day, everybody was watching, only a few people on TV and listening to their stories, but now everybody has a chance and a platform to express themselves and express their own stories through the internet, and it can transcend through the entire planet at the exact same time. And I think that Snapchat is a great intro to storytelling, intro to self-storytelling. When Vine first came out, people didn't understand how to make Vines, and it was really awkward for people to try and make a Vine. and only 30 people, I think, in the early days really understood the medium better than everybody. So, Vine was a medium where there was a lot of watchers and very few creators. On Snapchat, everybody's a creator and everybody's a watcher. And I think Snapchat's a great kind of intro to people learning how to storytell. I actually even made a Snapchat account called Carm, and it was a place where I was basically teaching my fans how to storytell themselves. I basically got them. I just started doing like intro to storytelling and just kind of teaching all of the different lessons that I had learned, and then I asked my fans to make their stories and then email me their stories, and I would give them feedback on how they did and how to improve them. In independent storytelling in the next few years, I think there's going to be a lot of different creation tools that are going to come out in the next few years, and I also think that people are going to create those stories on mediums and then end up putting them on Slinger afterwards. And there's going to be new ways of storytelling that we never even thought were possible before, and it's kind of hard to predict what those are going to be. But I think we're starting to see with like Snapchat's facial recognition software and all that kind of stuff. We're starting to go into a place where we're coming up with different ways of creating stories and creating characters around the people behind the people that are creating the stories.
Is there anything that you really wish there was already that you could use in your storytelling that you want someone to go and build?
Yeah, and I would love for somebody to build this. I would love for somebody to build a place where you can record FaceTime calls between two people. I think it would be really cool for if you could record like a FaceTime call in vertical video format. And if you imagine you saw two influencers jumping into a FaceTime call and they had this whole improv thing that they were planning to do, and it looks like you're watching them during a FaceTime call, but it's kind of like an improv moment between them. I think that would be such a cool app to have. I would love to use that with my friends and then sling that video after. And I think that'd be such a cool. Somebody please build it.
Amazing. Yeah, any of our product hunt makers out there, this is what you have to build. Okay, a couple more questions then. We have one from Neve. So Neve, again, big fan of your work. Everyone is, that's why we're here. How do you measure the quality of your snaps? Views is one thing, but does the number of screenshots play a part, or how do you measure it?
The best way to measure it is not screenshots. That's kind of a myth that's been created around Snapchat. Screenshots only really work for art, people that really want to capture a moment and kind of save that art to live forever. I don't really do that much art in my Snapchat stories. The way that I learn, I kind of got a behind the scenes look at how all the Viners were creating their content in the early days. And for them, the name of the game was create amazing content. And if you create great content, it will naturally rise to the top of the popular page. And if you can make it to the top of the popular page, then you can gain 40 to 50,000 followers in a day. It was a real feedback system and a real reward system. It was the ultimate game. It's like a daily talent show, and whoever wins every day wins 50,000 followers. On Snapchat, that doesn't exist. There is no pressure, there is no feedback mechanism, and there is no incentive to actually create better stories than you did before, except to kind of challenge yourself. But on Snapchat, the only way that I can learn how I did was I based it on how many people are replying and how many people are replying back to me, and kind of gauging the quality of those questions. Sometimes when I do a really killer motivational, inspirational story, I'll get an essay from somebody saying, you changed my life, and these are all the things going on in my life right now, and that's how I kind of measure is how many people are replying and the quality of those replies.
I think that kind of ties into a question that Teresa just asked. What is the best part about all of the fans?
So I kind of I don't really like to call them fans. I like to call them fams. I really feel like, it's like a family kind of thing. And some of these guys have been with me since I started on Snapchat. And the amount of drive you can see them have on social media, like after you do a story, the amount of tweets you receive from them, and just the amount of love that they spread online for you, like they're almost like partners, like I don't know how to say it, but like they're almost like your partners, and they're your evangelists that are helping to grow and build your following. And it's just so much love that's from all over the world, right? Like you look at a tweet and it's like somebody's tweeting you from New Zealand, and then somebody's tweeting you from Iceland, and then somebody's tweeting you from Saudi Arabia, and it's like they all feel like they're all part of the same kind of community, and they're all part of the same in the same room. It's just their drive is just so amazing. And it inspires me. Like it inspires me so much when I'm having a really down day. All of a sudden, I'll go through like Snapchat messages or tweets, and it's just it peps you up. It inspires you to keep going.
And so, who would you say you would recommend for people to follow, other than obviously yourself, on Snapchat and other video sharing
I would
platforms?
say
Really,
go on Slinger and go on the leaderboard and follow every single person on the leaderboard, because all the people that have risen to the top are the people who have really been trying the most, been pushing the best content. And that was the whole reason why we built Slinger, was for people to actually find these people. And there's a culture on the platform already, and it reminds me so much of the early days of Vine. And you can already start to see people who were kind of who weren't wanting to be influencers before. They were just a watcher. All of a sudden, they started creating videos, and now they're starting to trickle up the leaderboard a little bit. So they're kind of transitioning to the other side. And I just love seeing that so much. There's nothing that makes me happier.
and when you say they're starting to sort of trickle up, and I know you mentioned you have sort of tutorials that you've given out to people, what would you say to someone who's just starting out? What's your kind of main piece, your first tip of how to start?
The best thing you can do is just to start and not be overcritical. Don't be fearful if you create something that's not amazing. You need to just start somewhere, and then as long as you can keep in your mind that, okay, I'm going to start here and it's going to be crap the first one, but as long as I incrementally get better, and as long as I push myself to get better and better, you'll start to build confidence in yourself. And it's just like when you go to the gym and you start working out, you're not going to lift the heavy weights on day one, but if you start somewhere, it doesn't matter which one you start, as long as you start somewhere and you progress over time, you'll be fine. And I think that this day and age we've never lived in a day and age where you can sit in one room and be present in 179 countries simultaneously. And there's never been more opportunity than now. And I've seen so many people go from zero to millions and millions of followers, and how much it's changed their life. And the thing is, it's available for anybody. And there's so many people that are always like, why can't I be like that? Why can't I do it? And the thing is, you can. You just have to try. You have to start somewhere, and you can't be fearful. And being too fearful of it is your biggest inhibitor.
So just go for it, really.
Just dive in. Don't look back.
Cool.
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's fine. You're gonna figure something else out. Like this entire year, if you watch my Snapchat stories, like at one point I said I want to try music, and like I'm gonna go out on a whim and just try to make my own music. And I'm passionate about music. I love it, and it didn't work for me. And then now I'm making a vertical video movie, and I'm seeing if that works for me. And you just don't know until you try it. You just have to try something. And not enough people dabble in different areas, and too many people are just watching other people, and they're not trying themselves. And I just have to say, everybody has the opportunity to do it.
So what can we expect from your vertical video movie that you're making?
Yeah, so I'm actually I guess I haven't publicly announced it yet, but it's me and my co-founders of the company, and my and the rest of the team as well. We're all making this movie together, and it's kind of the backstory of how the company was launched, and kind of the epic heroic journey of the founders of the team, and all the struggles that we go through. all the trials and tribulations. And this entire movie is based off of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. I'm not sure if people are familiar with that, but it's a storytelling framework that has been used in every great story ever told. And we're going to kind of showcase, how cinema can actually be present on mobile. And people aren't thinking about vertical video movies yet, but I think in the next, within the next few years, we're going to start to see music videos. We're going to start to see movies created in vertical video format, and we kind of want to be the first ones to show that we understand vertical video very well, and we want to show and push the boundaries of what's possible, so we can inspire other people as well.
So if you could have anyone famous out there play you in your life story, who would it be? Obviously, you're doing yourself in this movie, but if there was a motion epic, who would you pick?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I honestly think fame is silly. It's kind of one of my co-founders just messaged me and said the guy from Star Trek. I don't know what he means by that, but
Which one?
I don't know. What's his name? Chris Pine? Chris Pine? I don't know. But he's saying Chris Pine. But I don't know. Like, I think fame is really silly, and I think people get really hopped up on fame a lot. And I think in the future, everybody's going to want their 15 minutes of privacy. It's gonna switch into everybody wanting to be famous to everybody has too much exposure, and people are gonna start wanting more and more privacy. Yeah, so I don't know. Sorry, I kind of went off a rant there, but yeah. Can you hear my Canadian accent, by the way?
Sorry?
Can you hear my Canadian accent, by the way, at all?
I can slightly.
No.
But I'm British.
Oh, yeah,
so
true.
It's not quite the same for me.
After I've been living in LA, I've been catching myself with little words that are Canadian accents.
You haven't picked up a local accent then?
I'm starting to pick it up, but people in the States say about, and Canadians say about. So it's about and about.
And we say about.
You guys say about?
The very pronounced T.
Yeah, about.
Yeah.
Nice.
So you mentioned privacy is going to be a big issue sort of in the future. Are you able to share some of the things that you like to do during your downtime when you're not working and not storytelling?
Yeah, I am thinking all the time. My brain doesn't shut down. I love going for long runs, long walks. I like a lot of alone time, and I like going through. Kind of sounds weird, but I love going through kind of struggles, internal struggles, and sometimes it leads to like a depressive state. But I always find myself that I come out of it a much better person. And I've gone through, like I said, I've gone through lots of ups and downs in my life, and I've really learned to be able to. I kind of see it as like, there's going to be, it's like a roller coaster. There's going to be lots of ups and there's going to be lots of downs, but as long as you're got your hands up and going woo the whole time, then it's going to be a fun ride. Now I look forward to the down times. I look forward to the up times, and that's my place where kind of magic happens for me. I have epiphanies when I'm in my down times, and yeah, that's I guess that's what I do in my spare time. I get all depressed. No.
No, you can't get depressed in your downtime. But if it's productive,
yeah,
then we'll let you off.
Exactly.
This kind of leads into a question that Kate's just sent in. She said, what's some of the most pivotal moments in your life, sort of challenges, successes, and what have they taught you? You've kind of spoken about how you get through challenges, but what are any of these pivotal moments that have taught you lessons, and what have they been?
Pivotal moments. For me, pivotal moments usually happen when my back is to the wall. I'm a big fan of kind of putting. I like pressure from the outside, but when I put pressure on from the inside, that helps me a lot. For example, I was going to graduate university, and I had a few weeks left before exams, and I just said, I don't want my degree. I'm never going to need this degree. I never want this piece of paper. I never want a backup plan. I'm going to try to do tech startups as long as it's going to take. And I just dropped out of school before I was going to graduate. And I moved to China after that. And that's where I met Jerome right after that. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of putting pressure on myself, and I love the idea of putting your back to the wall. Um, one other example is when I was in high school, I was trying to get into the school that I went to, which was called Laurier University, Wilfrid Laurier University, and it was the number one entrepreneurship school in Canada. That's what they were known for at the time. And I needed an 86 average or a B plus in order to get into the school. So what I did was, for me, I was always pulling off mid 50s my entire life. I had never gotten more than a C in anything, a C plus, and I had to pull off a B plus average to get into that school. So I didn't do anything through all of high school. I just needed 6 credits in my last year with a B plus to get into Laurier. And on our university admissions registration form, you can choose 3 schools that you want to go to. You can choose 3 schools just in case you don't get into one. Then you have like 2 other backups. And for me, I chose only 2. I chose Laurier and I chose the worst school in Canada. And for me, that meant I had no other choice but to perform and make sure I got into the school I wanted to get into. And if I didn't get in there, then I'm going to the worst school in Canada. So for me, I love putting pressure on myself. I love when my back's to the wall. It's when I perform the best. And that's where I've found where I've had the most pivotal moments in my life.
So sort of on that then, you mentioned obviously school and that you didn't think it was for you. What would you recommend to anyone in that same situation? There's obviously a lot of pressure on young people to get through college and to get that degree, and it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But what would you tell to people thinking, actually, I want to just start my startup or get into business, or how do they kind of go about making those sorts of decisions at such a young age?
Yeah, so I would say I'm not a big fan of school, and it took me when I went to university. My first week that I got to school, I started my first business, which was refilling ink cartridges for students on campus. Every student has a printer in their room, and each one of those printers had ink cartridges. And I had I had bought a whole bunch of wholesale ink, and then I just started the first Facebook group in my school, and I said $15 ink cartridges for students on campus. And then all of a sudden, I had a business. So with that business, I just started university, and I just started running my business at the same time. I would go to class the entire day, and I would learn nothing about entrepreneurship, and then I'd go home and I'd learn about the real nitty gritty things about how to run a business and how to run a company. And I spent the next 4 years going through school. Really, I learned some things, but for having to spend $20,000 a year for some of the things I spent a lot of time learning, I learned way more by running my business, and I was actually making money by running my business. So to me, the real world is the best experience you could possibly have. And anybody who's looking to get into entrepreneurship, imagine a world where, imagine all these business students, entrepreneurship students, instead of spending $20,000 a year going to school learning about entrepreneurship, imagine they invested that $20,000 and trying to start 4 businesses over 4 years. Imagine the type of person that would be produced from the person who went to school, who just invested $80,000 to $100,000 versus somebody who had tried four companies. Maybe the second business would have taken off, and they would have, gone way beyond where they would have been at school. I think that school is a huge waste of money. I think there are some industries where you have to go to school, obviously, in order to get to where you want to go. But I think a lot of people use school kind of as an excuse to party and an excuse to kind of, I want to meet new friends. I want to make all these connections and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a big excuse. And I would just love to see a world where people are investing that money into trying out the real world. And that's the best place. It's the best school. And it's free. Sort of.
I guess whilst we're looking back, sort of free.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would have done differently in your journey to where you're at now? Is there anything that you would look back and say, oh, damn, I wish I'd just done this instead?
I don't regret anything I've ever done. I look back and life is weird like that. When you look forward, you're always like, what's going to happen next? Like, what is my life going to become? And those days where you're just like, you're just like, you feel like you're at your worst, and you feel like everything's lost, and you don't know what you're doing with your life. And then you look back later on, you're like, oh, it all kind of makes sense now. Like, everything in my life does make sense, and all those things were supposed to happen. Otherwise, I wouldn't be me. I wouldn't be here where I am today. So I don't regret anything I've done in my past. I definitely would have not gone to school. In 2006, I would have totally started a company called Snapchat in a long time ago. I'm just joking. It would have been way too early for that. But I probably wouldn't have gone to school. But it's all hindsight, right? Like, it's impossible to do that. But I definitely would not have gone to school. It was a big waste of time for me. Even though I learned a lot, made a ton of friends. It was a big waste of time. I don't mean that in a negative way, by the way, everybody. I don't mean that in a negative way. It's an opportunity for us to tell, the next generation that they shouldn't waste their money.
Absolutely. Everything we've done is an opportunity to tell our own story, which is a great way of looking at everything we do. Okay, if anyone wants to call in from Blab, by the way, in the last sort of 10 minutes, we might grab some calls just to let those people know who are watching.
Cool.
And then I guess in the last sort of 15 minutes, it'd be really cool to know a bit more about your hopes for Slinger in the future and what your sort of next steps are going to be, and how you're going to move things forward from now.
So next steps for Slinger, we are about to launch. We're looking at the data. We've gotten tons of feedback from the community. We actually have the entire Slinger community, like who we think are the creators on the platform. We've put them into a Slack chat, and there's so much discussion going on there all the time. And there's a feedback forum, and there's a collab channel. There's all these different channels where we're seeing the community thrive. And before you launch the app, you can make all these assumptions about what's going to happen. And then when the app actually launches, and then you see the community thriving, you're like, okay, I think we're onto something here. And we've come to that point where we know we're onto something. And we're just so excited because, all the features that we're coming out with, we know the community is demanding and they want it so bad. And it was so good to just launch and just look at the data and be able to see, where we're kind of dropping the ball and where we can improve. And we know that as long as we keep on the track we're on right now, it's going to be a success. And we're just gonna keep pushing there. I can say we've got some really, really big ideas coming out that we can't talk about yet, but it's only been 3 weeks so far, and most startups kind of have a really awkward birth when they launch. They don't really have an identity of who they are or who they're going to become, and they don't really have early traction. We're kind of lucky that a lot of our assumptions were right about what is needed in the market, and we just know that the direction we're pointed towards, we're on a really good track right now.
And you sort of say you use Slack and other ways of involving the community. Are there any tools that you've sort of come across recently that you love and that you would recommend other people who are trying to build a product around a community get involved with?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, of course. What are the tools that you found to be really useful at the start of building Slinger? Are there anything that you've come across that you would recommend others sort of use in that respect, like Slack or other tools really?
Yeah, Slack for sure. Facebook, we have Facebook chat with all the influencers on Slinger right now. It's in terms of other tools, I don't really know of any other tools. And if one of my co-founders wants to remind me of anything I'm missing, feel free. But yeah, Slack has been just a place where we used to use, as a team, we used to use Google Hangouts for our chat. And then my co-founder, Gabe Rose, he's like, we got to get on Slack. It's so next level. And we're like, yeah, but Hangouts is working. It's fine. It's been working for a really long time. And then we've gone onto Slack, and a few days later, we're like, oh, now we get it. On that,
yeah, we love Slack too.
Yeah, I think you can't really build a company in today's age without using Slack. Otherwise, a lot of people are going to be missing out on a lot of good conversations. But to that point, Slack has been a place for our community to really be thriving right now. And I think a lot of these technology companies, if you look at Vine in the early days, they weren't talking to their creators at all. They weren't making the community thrive, but the Viners were the people that were driving the platform forward. And I think that CEOs of tech companies are too far removed from the community that's that's pushing the app forward. And Snapchat, for example, all these up and coming Snapchatters, they haven't had a place to grow their following. They've been like screaming, like, we need these features, we want these features, we depend on them. We have no way to grow ourselves right now. And I think a lot of these technology companies are just too removed from the people who understand the platform the best. And if you don't nurture that community, then you're gonna have to do something like Twitter did, which was buy niche a year and a half later for tens of millions of dollars, and then realize that all the creators are already gone off doing their own things. And if you're not nurturing that community from day one, and if you're not part of the politics of that community, then I think you're set up for failure. And I think if you do nurture that community, and if you do bring together the people who really love the platform and hold their hand, and you all scratch each other's backs, and you ask them for feedback, and you give them engaging experiences, it just creates such a thriving environment where in the long run you can't lose. So.
Oh, I love that. That's community first.
Exactly.
Which is a great
Product Hunt knows it better than anybody. That product.
We do love being part of the community.
Sorry?
So we do love being a part of the community, and looking forward to be part of Slingers too.
Exactly.
And you sort of touched on talking about larger tech companies. Has there been anyone who's been, I guess, a key influencer for you, or even a mentor, or someone that you look up to for those business or entrepreneurial decisions, or just some people that you look up to, really?
Honestly, it's my two co-founders. We've got a really interesting dynamic between us. We had a startup that failed before. It was called Crater. We ended up failing as a team, but in terms of business decisions, like, we have a really special environment where we're able to really fight each other in a good way, to a point where each one of us pushes each other to become the better version of ourselves. And we're not afraid to, I think in the startup I was doing before that, I was really afraid to argue with my co-founder. And there was a lot of things that started bubbling up over time that we weren't talking about, and we weren't communicating properly. With this team I have now, I look at them as my mentors. I think all the three of us, never building a video application before, and then coming up with the idea as a team, and all of a sudden having it built and all a thriving community on it. Like, we don't know what we're doing. We're making this up as we go, right? But they've been a really good support system for me, and I'm so blessed to have them. In terms of other inspiration from other entrepreneurs, I guess I get little bits and pieces from different people, but nobody inspires me more than my co-founders right now.
And how did you guys all come together? How did you meet? I know people often can struggle to find the perfect co-founder. What brought you guys together?
So for me, it was a numbers game. I literally, for an entire month, I was going through LinkedIn, adding as many engineers as possible. I went on meetup.com, added tons of engineers there. And it was, I just started kissing tons and tons of frogs. And eventually I found my magical princes of co-founders that I found. But it was a numbers game for me, and it just so happened that I already knew them. I already happened to know these guys, and they ended up, we were all working at the same office on different projects for an agency. So it just happened that these guys were the best, and we just felt a good vibe from day one, and we still feel that good vibe.
And how do your sort of skills complement one another in terms of who takes charge of X, Y, and Z, and what's your particular taking charge of?
We're all wearing many different hats right now, as any early early stage co-founder should. We're all wearing different hats. Gabe Rose is he's head of product. He's been meticulously had his head wrapped around the product, really pushing himself to build something that everybody really loves, and he's continuously pushing me to push him back, I guess. And Sharon, he's had his head wrapped around the back end, and the amount of work he's doing right now, he's literally sleeping like 4 hours a night, and for the past 8 months, he's just been coding, and he doesn't want to be on the tech side later on. He wants to be on the operations side, and he knows that, but he's able to wear the operations hat and the CTO hat at the same time. And then for me, I'm more of like the outbound, inbound person communicating between all the influencers and all the kind of opportunities we have with brands. And at the same time, we're all kind of wearing each other's hats, and we're kind of taking the place of each other. And there's no hierarchy between us. There's no one leader. We're all leaders at the same time, and it's a very democratic process that we have. And for each of us, our mentality is kind of, if we kind of have a voting system, and it's very rare that there's anything that we can't decide on as a team, because if we really put a lot of faith into each other's ideas, and there's a lot of times I'm wrong, there's a lot of times when the other guys are wrong, but we're always pushing each other to find what is the truth. And I feel if I can't convince one of them of a certain idea, or if one of them can't convince the other two guys of a certain idea, then maybe it's just not a good idea. And that's kind of been our process this entire time, and it's been working so far. And maybe it doesn't work in the long run, maybe it does, but so far it's been working really well.
Cool. We have just a couple of minutes, so I'm just going to throw some quick questions at you. So if you could say one piece of advice to someone starting out their new business tomorrow, what would it be?
Starting a new business tomorrow?
Yeah.
I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it. I would love to get it. I have an idea in the education space, that I'm telling all my best friends, if they want to take this idea and run with it, they're more than welcome to. But if they don't after Slinger, then I think I'm going to jump into there. I think education is going to be huge, and I would love to get in that space. And I have an idea that I think is going to change everything. But right now I'm just focused on it.
Intriguing.
Huh?
Very intriguing.
Yeah.
You should do it. Okay, and then final couple of questions. What piece of advice have you been given that has been sort of most influential on your outlook of how you do business?
I don't know. I feel like I honestly don't know. I'm sorry.
You don't have to know everything. We'll let you off this one. You don't have to know everything. It's okay. We'll let you off. And I guess then to sort of wrap things up, what can we expect from you in terms of your Snapchat stories? I know you said you've sort of gone off them a little bit recently whilst you concentrate on Slinger, but I know everyone's keen to see you do more of them, and what can they expect from that?
Yeah, so right now I'm kind of I'm promoting a lot on my Snapchat. I promoted this hangout today. I've promoted Slinger really hard. I have very little time right now to be focusing on Snapchat, but I would love, my Snapchats, I don't do what typical people do on Snapchat, which is, show my breakfast that I'm eating that day. And these are the friends that I'm hanging out with right now. I like to have some sort of a narrative behind it, but, with Slinger now available, I I kind of can tell those stories in a different way, and I'm not limited to Snapchat's 10 seconds. I can use a high definition DSLR camera if I want to do those motivational, inspirational stories. So maybe I do want to try using Snapchat the same way everybody else does. Now that we've got Slinger as a medium where I can tell those longer narratives now. But for now, I'm just gonna I'm kind of putting it on the back burner for a bit. Unfortunately, I really miss telling stories. But for me, I only tell a story if I really feel like it needs to be told. And there's times where I'm not there for months, and I don't have it. I don't feel like I have it within me to be telling those stories at that time. So, I hope I have enough free time soon to be able to do that. But for now, it's a little bit on the back burner.
Concentrating on Slinger right now, which, yeah, it's very exciting for us all to see. And thank you so much, Chris. We're sort of at the end of our hour now. But thank you so much for joining us, taking the time out to chat with everyone here on Product Hunt and Blab. It's been a real pleasure to host you. So thank you very much. If there's any parting words of wisdom or where people can find you if they want to follow up, please take it away.
Yeah, I guess if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Chris Carm, ChrisCarm. Follow Slinger on Twitter. Download Slinger. It's in the App Store. And yeah, that's it.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, and let us know all the updates on Slinger. And don't be a stranger on Product Hunt.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Really appreciate it.
Bye. So everyone, thanks very much for being with us today. It's been amazing hosting Chris, and you've all been brilliant with amazing questions. We have got more Blabs coming up, so keep an eye on our Product Hunt profile page. We have Dani Jones and Eric Torenberg on Friday, which should be a great one, so don't miss that one. And we have a few coming up next week as well. So thanks, stand by.